note of what you wear each week so you'll know what not to wear the following week?
No, just the opposite. I'm totally disorganized. I go up to my closet and I say, what do I feel like doing now? 90% of what I do is all by instinct or intuition.
Okay.
And the jewelry that I was going to wear, they go into my closet and break things, and they broke my favorite necklace that I inherited. Yeah. So I have to get it repaired.
Mm.
They figure that's going to scare me, that they're into my things. It doesn't scare me. I just get mad.
Stand by.
Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Udis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. Today's segment is about the global currency reset. We're coming to you live from DCTV studios. I'd like to thank Carmen Stanley, studio producer and director, Maurice Jackson, audio and prompter, and Dolores Harris, floor director. On Sunday, I told people in my social media that I was busy writing the teleprompters for this series on the network of global corporate control. I said that the series has achieved its purpose to convince enough people that the world's assets belong to humankind and that the Bretton Woods institutions, that is, the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, including their Articles of Agreement, are there to serve humanity in a peaceful transition, the global currency reset. At the end is the teleprompter for last year's show, which describes how Jose Rizal, together with Ferdinand Marcos, created the World Bank and International Monetary Fund to make a peaceful transition possible and established the Group of 77, which is a group of 134 developing countries. Jose Rizal was the Superior General of the Jesuits, that is, the Black Pope, and he put the world's assets in hiding for 50 years and put the World Bank and International Monetary Fund in charge of making sure that these assets ended poverty and benefited the world's people. And I'm showing you pictures of Jose Rizal as a young man and as Father Antonio Diaz. On Sunday, I told the many people following this saga on the internet that the United States is part of this peaceful transition. The United States monetary gold reserves are going to be made available to the United States, just as the other countries will have their monetary gold reserves restored to them in their respective currencies. The world's illegitimate governments are going to be replaced gradually and peacefully as grassroots organizations systematically cleanse the local villages and towns and learn how this corruption in the world's governments came to be. I prepared the minutes of the upcoming spring meeting of the Bretton Woods institutions. These minutes are going to be cleared by the 25 ambassadors in Washington in liaison with their ministers of finance and development who belong to the Development Committee. They will also be cleared by the Intergovernmental Group of 24 on International Monetary Affairs and Development, which is the liaison of the G77 with the World Bank and IMF. I just tweeted these minutes and emailed them to the New York and Tokyo embassies. I will mail hard copies to the 25 Washington embassies on the Development Committee and for onward transmittal to the Ministers of Finance and Development and to the 4 embassies with officers on the G77, that's Ethiopia, Sri Lanka, Peru, and Colombia. I have also been clearing documents with the New York missions and Tokyo embassies. I'm consulting with the world's peoples on the internet and make sure to answer everyone's questions. So far, I've been able to keep up with all of the correspondence personally. I vote the shares of the United States during this interregnum in the legitimate government of the United States. That is the largest vote on the Development Committee. Germany and Japan have the second and third largest votes. Neither Germany nor Japan are going to let the unconstitutional Federal Reserve note crash and leave the United States military without resources. In my letter of November 6, 2016, to Mr. David S. Ferriero, the archivist of the United States, I said, quote, "On behalf of the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, I have informed Germany and Japan that the monetary gold reserves of the United States in the global debt facility are being deployed to enable the United States to fulfill its treaty obligations in the defense of Germany and Japan. I also included a link to my letters informing the defense attachés of Japan and Germany to this effect. The archives of this series is on YouTube, and people can see from the comment section how everyone is responding to our common resolve to end the corrupt money system foisted on us by the banking cartel. For people who doubt the truth of what I'm telling you, I advise you to look at the documents that prove our case. But first, get yourself into a small study group so that you're less vulnerable, and also so that your group can tell you when you're not yourself. This is protection from very powerful military technologies which use low frequencies and scalar technologies. It may take some time for the banking cartel and its puppet governments to admit that they're simply play acting on the world stage with no truth, money, or authority. Enough people know that this is a hollow exercise, fake news, and lies. Read through the documents that are linked to these tweets. For anyone who needs further convincing, just realize that not a single embassy in New York or Washington, D.C. or Tokyo has argued in defense of Sandy Okoro, the World Bank's former general counsel who was fired as an agent of the now defeated banking cartel. There's another very powerful proof. It is that you can see the consistent timeline. First, I tell you that I'm going to do something, and then you can see me doing this. As an example, I'm including the teleprompter from the segment last year, in which I was preparing the minutes of last year's spring meeting and telling you about Jose Rizal. Jose Rizal was trying to anticipate what would help ensure after 50 years' time that people would use the global debt facility to free mankind. Rizal did not anticipate that a whistleblower would come along in the World Bank's legal department. But when I did, and then found out what Rizal and Ferdinand Marcos had left us, and then I got a hold of the Department of Defense Power Transition model, this really helped. Another thing that helped was when I went and lived in Amsterdam and studied economics. This was during the time that I graduated from New York University and when I started studying at Yale Law School. Don't be intimidated by the academic studies. It turns out that the disciplines tend to prevent people from trying to understand things. It's the self-taught people and not the lawyers who actually could see how the birth certificate scam was working. What is the birth certificate scam? People assign their babies into a system where their children are listed on the stock markets as a company, and that gets registered as a bond and earns interest. So the thing about Holland is that is where the first corporation, the East India Company, started. And you could see from a tweet in October 2016 that a Dutch company, Wolters Kluwer, is the agent for most of the companies in the world. And I'm going to quote from somebody who sent me some information. This information was forwarded from a friend, and I did some checking. Holy cow! These are some very bad guys. This is huge. The top of the heap, listed as CT Corporation System on Idaho Secretary of State 1936. And in the teleprompter, you can see what the Secretary of State of Idaho has written. Their registered agent is the Corporation Trust Company, which is the registered agent for just about every corporation in the country and the world. CT Corporation System is also a registered agent. Says they're a foreign to Idaho corporation, a Delaware corporation, but Delaware Secretary of State's business entity database is closed until tomorrow. Actually, they're one and the same. The largest in the world, agent information, the Corporation Trust Company Corporation Trust Center in Wilmington, Delaware. It's also known as CT Corporation System. CT, or the Corporation Trust Company, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Wolters Kluwer, a multinational information services company based in the Netherlands with operations in over 35 countries. CT is the umbrella brand for two businesses, CT Corporation and CT Lean Solutions. CT Corporation is the largest registered agent service firm in the world. And then there's a woman named Valerie Scarpelli who wrote on my YouTube comment section, quote, "I forgot to say, God bless you, my sister Karen, for all of your work and goodwill to mankind. Under God of peace and creative solutions, whether I'm Christian and you are Jewish, I regard you as a sister in peace under my beloved Jesus. I embrace you with his love." And then what I wrote back to Valerie, "Valerie, I'm leaving your posts up. For goodness sake, do some more study and get into a group. Your comment about my being Jewish sticks out like a sore thumb. Please, people, read what I've written about divide and conquer and the head of the snake, and how the religions and our spirituality have been confused during all of our history, and we need to wait until the money corruption is cleaned up to tackle those issues. For starters, the problems we're dealing with now have been with us for many thousands of years, and before Judaism and the prophets were on earth." And I'm just going to ask you, Mo, to stop scrolling. I want to make a little statement here, because I realize that some people may think about what I said, that I'm committing some kind of blasphemy, that I'm not a person who believes that Jesus Christ exists in spirit. And as I told people in one of the previous sessions, I actually had an out-of-body experience where I saw Jesus Christ. I'm not saying that that proves anything. I'm just simply saying that we need to suspend judgment on other people about their religions, and we need to tackle the corruption, which is very, very clear to us. And it's going to take away all of our pensions, and it's going to end humankind as we know it. We have got to deal with the religions, all of us together, working peacefully, in sequence. First, we clean up the money corruption, and then we tackle the spiritual problems. Okay, now I'm going to pick up on the teleprompter. At the end of this post, I'm putting a document from the end of December which shows you how the banking cartel is trying to steal all of your pensions. That is not going to happen. The banking cartel is not in charge. Who is? The Coalition for the Rule of Law, consisting of 134 developing countries, and the rest of us that understand how corrupt our world is. At the moment, all of the governments and their central banks think that they have pulled the wool over our eyes. What we have just learned is that enough of us know what is actually going on to turn the tables on these crooks. That is called critical mass. We have reached critical mass, and the changes I've been telling you about are going to become manifest. Think of a pregnant woman who is about to give birth. Is there going to be a baby? You bet. The Earth is now pregnant with the global currency reset. I am now speaking for the legitimate government of the United States on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, which is in charge of the United States monetary gold reserves. And I am recognized by a coalition for the rule of law that was predicted by a power transition model that came to the World Bank and International Monetary Fund from the United States National War College in 2004. The power transition model is 90 to 95% accurate. I will post these minutes soon and clear them with the New York, Tokyo embassies, in addition to the Washington embassies of the countries on the Development Committee. These minutes are very similar to the minutes on the global currency reset that have been cleared at last year's annual meeting. The embassies just finished clearing these minutes again when Sandy Okoro, the World Bank's senior vice president and general counsel, was fired. At the center of the Coalition for the Rule of Law is the G77, a group of 134 developing countries. The G77 has appointed Ethiopia's Minister of Finance as the liaison to the World Bank and IMF. After writing a legislative history of the G77 when I was a young law student in 1976, I said that the world was never going to be the same. That's why Ibrahim Shihada, an Egyptian lawyer who used to be general counsel of OPEC, hired me into the World Bank's legal department in 1986. I never looked back. The Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF fired the current general counsel of the World Bank because Sandy Okoro is an agent of the Banking Cartel, and none of the embassies has contradicted this. Sandy Okoro is now pretending that she wasn't really fired. That's only play acting. A lot of what you see now is simply play acting, and that includes Donald Trump. He's just a play actor. The reality is that Sandy Okoro was fired, and she is now bankrupt under a commercial lien that's held by me and by the Global Debt Facility. The Banking Cartel tried to remove the paragraph in the commercial lien on Sandy Okoro, which showed how the members of the Board of Governors approved the minutes of meeting in 2016 for the global currency reset. I put this statement back in the commercial lien, and I'll read that. On March 15, 2017, lien claimant, that's me, informed the members of the Boards of Governors and the Development Committee via their New York missions and Tokyo embassies as follows. This is to inform you of my fax dated March 13, 2017, to Dr. Sandy Okoro, Group General Counsel of the World Bank, concerning the global currency reset, and that she is to be relieved of her duties if she is unwilling to implement the global currency reset previously referred to in the minutes of the 2016 annual meetings. These are the words that are in the commercial lien that are at the heart of the global currency reset. Quote, Sandra Okoro is acting outside the duties of the General Counsel of the World Bank and has prevented me from returning to the World Bank's headquarters and working on the global currency reset agreed to by the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF. Sandra Okoro has violated the Articles of Agreement of the World Bank, in particular Article 5, Section 2, which reads, Board of Governors, all the powers of the bank shall be vested in the Board of Governors, and Section 5C. The President, officers, and staff of the bank in the discharge of their offices owe their duty entirely to the bank and to no other authority. Each member of the bank shall respect the international character of this duty and shall refrain from all attempts to influence any of them in the discharge of their duties. That's the end of the quote from the articles. I have notified lien debtor, that's Sandra Okoro, of her nonfeasance, misfeasance, and malfeasance, and given her the opportunity to rectify matters so that the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development can be brought into compliance on the world's capital markets, and so that the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF can complete the global currency reset. Still, lien debtor, that's Sandra Okoro, remains recalcitrant. The lien debtor, that's Sandra Okoro, is in commerce, and this is interfering with my fiduciary responsibilities to the World Bank, the IMF, and the world's peoples as beneficiaries of, and then I've given the name of the global debt facility, which is officially TVM LSM 666. This is damaging my business advantage, character, and is obviously intentional, willful, wanton, and ongoing as it is by design, this being self-evident. Now, that's the end of the quote. Even for people who have trouble believing in the 1.8 million metric tons of gold in the monetary gold reserves that are administered in the global debt facility, and these are very real, there is also documentary proof of the 2 quadrillion in bonds that were issued by the Federal Reserve in the 1930s. I have placed valid liens against the Fed. The cash flow going to the banking cartel from that scam called country debt, that is ending in the global currency reset. Ronald Reagan's Grace Commission showed this cash flow to the banking cartel, and I recently reminded people of this, and you can see the links in the teleprompter, which I'm going to be putting up on YouTube, and I've also tweeted it earlier today. The banking cartel still thinks the power transition model and the Coalition for the Rule of Law are not in charge, and it is now making another vain attempt to steal the world's monetary gold reserves. It thinks that the Secretariat of the World Bank, which is not in charge and which is controlled by the banking cartel, can still steal the world's monetary gold reserves. This is not happening. None of the embassies deny that I speak for the legitimate government of the United States on the Board of Governors. In the meantime, I wanted to show you a comment I made a year ago about the alternative media. When the alternative media is funded by the banking cartel, it's increasingly difficult for people to understand what is actually true. But as the extent of the corruption is exposed, more and more people are catching on to reality. And then, this is the quote. Hold on, this is waiting to be approved by the Patriot Post. That was one of the alternative medias. You're attempting to reassure your readers by a personal attack on Alex Jones. I'm not defending Alex Jones. What I'm doing is I am taking issue with your characterization of the rest of the people worried about martial law in the United States of America as conspiracy theorists. For your information, the United States has remained under martial law since 1861. The United States Congress has been extending the state of emergency behind closed doors without bothering to inform the United States citizens. That is because we've been operating under a second secret constitution ever since 1871, when the Revolutionary War debts fell due to the bankers. Members of Congress are managers of a corporation called the United States that has stolen the property rights of Americans. The titles to our homes and cars and other property is held by the banks. Since 1937, the states are only issuing us warranties of our title to our property. Moreover, the courts are not the courts guaranteed to us under, the scroll is going too fast. Can you go back? Thank you. The courts are not the courts guaranteed to us under the original Constitution, and the federal judges are simply administrators in the kangaroo courts which treat the people that come before them as miniature companies set up after our birth certificates were pledged by the bankers on the capital markets. This book by George Mercier, who was the clerk of New York's district court, tells how it's done. The best way to reassure your readers is not to deny this reality. The best way to reassure your readers is to tell them that many of us are onto the bankers, including 3 mathematicians at Switzerland's Federal Institute of Technology who exposed this network of global corporate control in 2011. Other persons who were onto these bankers were John F. Kennedy, Abraham Lincoln, and Ronald Reagan, who were assassinated or shot when trying to extricate Americans from this matrix. Ronald Reagan had appointed the Grace Commission, which reported back that every cent of our income taxes goes to the private unconstitutional Federal Reserve. Fortunately, dedicated insiders have given us the means to fight back using the rule of law. 50 years ago, Jose Rizal, who became the Superior General of the Jesuits, appointed a young lawyer, Ferdinand Marcos, to put the world's wealth into a trust called the Global Debt Facility that is administered by the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF. As acting general counsel of the World Bank's oldest agency, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, I've been working with the Board of Governors to return each country's monetary gold reserves to them in the form of currency. The United States gold has been accepted on behalf of the United States by the county executives of America. We're very close to the global currency reset. The chances this comes to pass are 90 to 95%, based on a power transition model that comes from the Department of Defense. The officers that you have quoted in your article are simply Knights of Malta and disloyal to their country. The rest of the United States military, including the Joint U.S.-Japan Committee under the Status of Forces Agreement, remain patriots. Now that you have refused to post my comment, it is clear that the title of your rag is a misnomer. And then I've given you links how to follow progress in my social media. And I've also referred to the DCTV series. The United States Treasury does not have the United States gold reserves. This was made clear with the bogus Freedom of Information Act request for the audit of the United States monetary gold reserves that contradicted a previous paper audit. The U.S. Federal Register shows that the federal government no longer exists after the 1933 bankruptcy of the U.S. by the Banking Cartel. Using the Wayback function on archive.org, I downloaded an old statement of the U.S. Treasury, which shows that there was only a paper audit of the U.S. monetary gold reserves. This is simply theatrics and lies by the Banking Cartel. We have shown that the Treasury Department doesn't exist anymore. Quote, it's an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act. And we gave the quote in the Federal Register. That was James Traficant, who showed that President Roosevelt declared the U.S. federal government as bankrupt and insolvent. And the Gold Clause dissolved the sovereign authority of the U.S. and the official capacities of all United States government offices, and departments. And it's further evidence that the U.S. federal government exists today in name only, and that I showed you that this is where the quote is. And we've also shown the, I believe that's Utah Supreme Court case, which documents how the U.S. is under martial law, and we've been under martial law ever since 1861. However, the Board of Governors has now said that the U.S. doesn't have a legal government. And that is how it happens that I'm going to be speaking for the United States on the Board of Governors to defend the U.S. monetary gold reserves during this interregnum until we put the Constitution of the U.S. of 1879 back into effect. And we're going to do that via an Article 5 convention. And this advice of Scalia was intercepted after the banking cartel murdered Scalia. And we've been commenting also on what's been happening with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is not actually operating under the Constitution. And Sandra Day O'Connor knew that quite well and put that in a legal opinion. I'm being told to wind up, so I want to thank you